Hello, I'm Claire Smith and welcome to my channel. So today's video is going to be my most worn fragrances of 2024. Happy New Year, of course. Happy 2025. But today's video I'm going to look back at my most worn fragrances across each of the months of 2024 and just talk a little bit about each one, tell you whether they were new to my collection, whether they were something that I'd had for a while, whether they were something that I was hung up on a particular note profile, whether there was some kind of other thing going on in my life to make me want to reach for particular fragrances. And I'm just going to walk you through the year and tell you what I was up to really. So if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire Smith. I make videos all about perfume, perfume science, perfume history, perfume psychology, and I also just do some straight perfume reviews and also fun perfume tags. So if that kind of thing interests you and you haven't already done so, then please do consider subscribing and please also like this video if you do enjoy this kind of content. So let's get on with this. What was I up to in January? So back in January, I was feeling super stressed about work. I had just realised my dream job had just come onto the jobs market and I just was determined that I was going to get this job. I really wasn't thinking about trying new fragrances. I wasn't thinking about going out. I was just thinking about making this job application, buckling down at work, looking like the most employable person on this planet, and really that was my whole thought process for this month. So it's not surprising that my most worn fragrance last January was a very work appropriate fragrance, and this one is called Drop to Issei and it's by Issey Miyake. So I've had this one for maybe 6 months, and this fragrance is something that really makes me think of springtime. It makes me think of just being fresh out of a shower. It's a very fresh, clean feeling fragrance, but also it's got lilac in it, and that's what makes this fragrance super special. So actually I've recommended this fragrance to a few people now, and two of the people that I've recommended this to have ended up buying it. So the first person was somebody who was getting married and they wanted a fresh spring feeling fragrance, and they told me, other fragrances that they've liked, and they wanted something affordable, so I suggested this one. Also, another person at work was really looking for a lilac fragrance. They had an old Yves Rocher fragrance that they absolutely loved, and they wanted something with a lilac note. So I suggested this fragrance because lilac is really rare in designer perfumery, and that really makes this fragrance stand out above everything else really. This one is one of the few fragrances that have really had me at hello in the designer market over the last couple of years, and I would really recommend this one. It dries down into something that I think I would describe as a Nivea body lotion. It's that kind of clean out of the shower kind of fresh smell. It's got a milkiness to it, it's kind of almondy, but it's also bright and optimistic somehow. It really does make me think of springtime and just of nice sort of sunny weather that's coming, and I think that's really what I was looking for back in January. I was looking for something bright and optimistic and something that just said employ me to the people around me. So that's Drop to Issei by Issey Miyake. So in February I had that job interview, but also I went on a trip to Rome, and I really wanted to take fragrances with me to Rome that would give me scent memories of Rome, that I could really associate with Rome. So I took two that I thought might be appropriate. And really, the weather in Rome was so good for February. It was about 20 degrees. I was actually quite surprised at how warm it was. But these fragrances both seemed to fit really well. So the first one that I took was Floral Street's Ylang Ylang Espresso. And this fragrance is a boozy espresso fragrance, really. It's this kind of spiced rum and espresso fragrance. It has a touch of Ylang Ylang, but really it's also a syrupy rose in the dry down. And almost a boozy spirit kind of rose. This one I just find really addictive. It's one of the few gourmands in my collection that I just cannot get enough of. And, this is only a tiny bottle, but I'm sort of down to here. So, it's going to be done soon, basically. But the other fragrance that I did take with me, and it ended up being my most worn for February, was Etui Noir by Miller Harris. And if you don't know me, then you won't know, but I absolutely love suede in fragrances, and this is a suede fragrance. So Etui Noir translates as black needle case or dark needle case, and it does make me think of the texture of those suede needle cases that you get. This is more of a lipsticky, irisy, dropped makeup in a handbag kind of smell to me. Definitely the iris is very prominent, has a slight spice to it, but really is quite a buttery, leathery fragrance as well. The suede is one of the best that I've smelt in fragrance, full stop. I would put this in the same league as things like Bottega Veneta by Bottega Veneta. I think those fragrances are probably my favourite leathery suede fragrances, full stop, that I've smelt. And I've smelt a lot. This one though, I think is probably one of my favourites from Miller Harris. Miller Harris do have quite a few fragrances, especially in their older collections that I absolutely love. But I would really recommend Etui Noir in particular from Miller Harris. I think it's one of their best. So that's Etui Noir by Miller Harris. So March felt like a really celebratory month for me. I had just turned 40 at the end of February. I'd got my dream job and I was just finishing off stuff from my old job. And really I was back to sampling a lot with fragrances. I was really excited by fragrance again. And really my collection was not really getting a look in. So it really wasn't hard for me to pick the one that I wore the most, because there really was only one fragrance that I wore twice during March, and that was Mabel Orama's Forbidden Bloom. So this was actually an original sample of her fragrance before she released it, and so my version is slightly different to the version that was actually finally released. So mine's a really tropical, fruity, floral kind of fragrance, but the thing I love about it is the fact that the fruits are just so juicy. Ripe peaches, really ripe pears. It's just the juiciest, most realistic, fruity, floral fragrance that I've ever smelt. I'm really amazed by how good Mabel Orama fragrances are for how young her company is. And she's clearly going to go very far, I think. She's just got her third fragrance out and she got to the finals of the Fragrance Foundation Awards with this particular fragrance last year. I really can see why. So this one, it dries down and you get some frangipani in there. It's really tropical feeling, as I've said, but not in a beachy way. It's not an obvious, like coconutty kind of holiday fragrance. It's nothing like that. It's not suntanny. It's not sun creamy. It's just a really juicy, but also floral fragrance. And then it dries down into this beautiful, mysterious, dark feeling musk, which I absolutely love in fragrances. And it's just so well done, this one. Really worth sampling Mabel Orama fragrances. And I think she's going to be a big brand eventually. It's going to take some time. She's now got a US distributor, so that's another country unlocked for people to try her creations. But yeah, this one I really enjoy. Forbidden Bloom by Mabel Orama. So in April, I finally got my hands on a fragrance that I've been wanting a bottle of for ages. And I knew I didn't want a big bottle because it's a really expensive fragrance. But I also knew that I wanted the older formulation because I tried both formulations in store and the difference was night and day. So the newer formulation I just really didn't like at all. The older one I fell completely in love with. So this one is Imperial Emerald by Merchant of Venice. So this fragrance is a slightly spicy tuberose fragrance really overall. It really has a lot of spiciness from the lily here, but it also has some ylang-ylang, orange blossom, and of course the tuberose. It's a really kind of creamy but powdery tuberose. And the dry down is really a kind of spiced, resinous tuberose musk. I just find this one incredibly elegant. It always makes me think of weddings. I think if I were going to a really posh wedding, this is definitely the fragrance from my collection that I would choose. This fragrance just makes me want to dress up and flounce around, basically. And I feel really overdressed in this at work, but I just love wearing this. I think this fragrance, with a travel size, I'm good. Apart from the fact that the bigger bottle is absolutely stunning and I would love that bottle in my collection, I think I don't use very much of this because it is so strong and it does last so long that I'm never probably going to get through this 10ml bottle given the size of my collection. So yeah, Imperial Emerald, been loving it and I can't wait to wear it again when it gets to springtime here in the UK again. It's just gorgeous in the springtime. So that's Imperial Emerald by Merchant of Venice. So during May, my most worn fragrance was actually one of my birthday gifts. So this was a birthday gift from John at Scented Snowdrops, and John absolutely loves this brand. So it's from One Way Bridge, which is a New Zealand brand, and this fragrance is called Pitching Woo. So sadly, the metal label for this bottle has fallen off, but I haven't glued it back on yet. But this fragrance actually sold out in its original release, and they brought it back again because it was so popular. So the perfumer for this brand, and actually the brand owner for this brand, Elise, really prides herself on using native New Zealand plants and herbs in her fragrances. And that means that you are guaranteed, if you don't live in New Zealand, to smell something completely different to anything you've ever smelt in fragrance before when you try one of her perfumes. And this is no exception for me. So this one is a gourmand fragrance, but it's a gourmand you will never have smelt in your life. It's so interesting. But this is really a delicious peachy ice cream kind of fragrance. It's really creamy, but it also has this coolness to it. And the coolness comes from a herbal aspect of this. It's almost minty. It's almost a little bit nettly, almost to me at points. But really, when this dries down, there's also some really sweet toffee, and there's also a slight fizziness to this. So it's almost like the ice cream is on a fizzy drink, almost like a float. And it's just the most interesting gourmand I've smelt in years. This is something you will not smell anywhere else. And I was really blown away by this one, as I was by a few of the other fragrances from this brand. Even if the other ones aren't quite up my street sometimes, I'm always astounded by the inventiveness of this brand. And I really hope that Elise gets to be more widely known. So that's One Way Bridge, and that's Pitching Woo. So by June, I really just wanted to celebrate getting my dream job, starting my dream job, and I wanted a fragrance memory to associate with that. So I bought myself a really special fragrance that had been on my wish list for a while, and I ended up wearing it quite a lot in June. So this one is Bouquet Encore, and it's from L'Orchestre Perfume. So I tried a sample of this from Emily at EMS Heart Notes, and really, this is a fragrance that amongst my fragrance friends, we all appreciate, we all love, and that's so unusual. You know, people with diverse tastes finding a fragrance that they all share in common as a love is so unusual. Another one is Gris Dior by Dior. So this fragrance is an earthy, hot, spicy feeling tuberose. It's almost like fireworks. It's definitely got a fieriness to it, and it really feels orange in a way, especially in the opening. The fieriness really does stay into the dry down though, and that is accompanied by some jasmine. It's also accompanied by sort of a creamy feeling, a vanilla, and also the musk. I would say that really the other notes are quite secondary to the tuberose. The tuberose is really the main star, along with that kind of fiery feeling. But this one's just so distinctive, and having tried more from Orchestre Perfumes, I've realised that that kind of spiciness and also the powderiness and the muskiness is really their signature. And I rate this company. I think they've got some really lovely fragrances. So yeah, I would say that Bouquet Encore is basically my fireworks celebration fragrance for getting my new job. So in July, I'd won a bottle of fragrance in an Instagram giveaway, and this one I tried a few years earlier and really just, I'd loved it at the time, but you know, when you first start smelling fragrances, when you start experiencing them, you don't really know what you've got until you've smelt a sea of other fragrances that you're not so bothered about. And then you look back and you think, wow, those early ones that John sent me were actually amazing. And you don't see that when you're just starting, because you haven't tried enough fragrances to realise what a great fragrance is. And this is a great fragrance. So this one's Nancy Meiland's Eglantier. So Eglantier actually translates as rose hip. And yes, I get like a rosewood kind of smell in this. Definitely does have a woodiness to it, like a rose-hued wood. But also, this really, to me, just smells like straw bales in a sunny summer field. A field that's just been harvested is the smell that I get overall from this. But there's also white florals, a really rich, heady kind of white floral feel in this. Definitely some jasmine. There's also just this kind of resinous feel in the dry down. There's also a saltiness, along with that woodiness as well, and it's just a really striking fragrance, and it's just full of contrasts, and I love that about it. There's always something new to smell in this one. And really, I think, you know, the inspiration for this fragrance is about two seas that never mix, sort of flowing past each other, and I really don't get that at all. I definitely get the name Eglantier, but I don't get the sea thing, other than maybe the saltiness. But yeah, it's not overtly salty, it's just a little hint. And it just adds to the overall interest of this fragrance. But yeah, I really want to try out more from Nancy Meiland. I've tried one of her other fragrances and I did really enjoy it. Not as much as this one, but I did really enjoy it and I would love to try the others. So that's Nancy Meiland's Eglantier. So in August, things really changed because I started using a fragrance tray, and this was a kind of new idea for me. I really didn't think I'd get along with it. I really struggled to limit myself to 10 fragrances per month, and I've really relaxed my rules with my fragrance tray. But in August, I was sticking to 10 fragrances and 10 fragrances only. And I actually went on holiday for about a week to a place in France called Tours. And Tours was beautiful, and I loved looking at all the different castles, the chateau around there. Had a lovely time, and ultimately I only took 2 fragrances with me because I thought, I've got a tray. I'm going to try and, be a little bit sensible with packing. Normally I'm pretty crazy and take like 8 for 6 days or something. But this time I was sensible and I just took 2. And I must admit, I did feel a little bit limited. But it did mean that these were my 2 most worn in August. And I did really enjoy really getting to know one of them that I didn't really know much about. So one of these fragrances I talk about loads. And you probably will have heard me talk about it if you've watched my channel. And this one is Theodoros Kalotinis Alluring Fig. So Alluring Fig is a green fig leaf kind of fragrance, more than the fig fruit kind of fragrance. And it's also got this really green feeling vanilla. And some people sort of say, it's maybe a bit milky, can be sometimes a little bit too much for the summer, but I actually really love this one in the summer. I really feel like it shines best in the summer. And it really makes me think of Mediterranean holidays. It makes me think of sitting underneath fig trees, having breakfast in the coolness of the morning when, the sun's going to rage the rest of the day. It really does give me that kind of Mediterranean vibe. And I've had this a few years. It's got a significant dent. Really strong, really long lasting, a good value fragrance, as are a lot of the ones from Theodoros Kalotinis. I really like Coffee Addict as well. I don't own that one, but I do really like it. So that's the one I talk about all the time. And that was equal with another one that I took on holiday. So the other one I took on holiday, it's one that I don't really talk about very much at all, actually. And I didn't really know it until I took it on holiday. So this was Tea Tonic by Miller Harris. So this is a citrus tea and surprisingly suede, but also a kind of woody, smoky fragrance. And I would just think Miller Harris, as you may have seen earlier in this video, do suede really well in fragrances. And this is kind of a summery suede fragrance. So the citrus does linger and it does sort of stick around with the tea as well, but really it's a smoky woodiness that you get in the dry down. This is not the longest lasting fragrance in my collection, but it's just really refreshing and a really good choice for a really hot summer's evening. I really feel like this one is you're going out to dinner and you want to spritz on something different before you go out as a refresher. I think this fragrance worked really well for that and I really enjoyed it. So that's Tea Tonic by Miller Harris. So in September I was back to work and I was super busy and I was just going for easy reaches again. I just didn't have time to be mucking around and I just had my fragrance tray as well. So it was reaching for fragrances from my tray in the most part. And really there was a 4-way tie here. But I'm going to pick the one fragrance that I feel has been my most worn. Well, I know it's been my most worn throughout the entire year. I totted it up and this was by far my most worn fragrance. And this is just because it's something I always enjoy wearing. It's something that fits in with every situation. It's not too strong. And it just has a freshness to it, as well as a lot of notes that I absolutely love in fragrance. So I particularly really enjoy musk in fragrance, and this has a really nice musk. And I just think Guerlain are just a really good fragrance house. I think you can't really go wrong with Guerlain. They're just a really solid choice. So this one is Guerlain's La Petite Robe Noire, and it's the plissé variant. So this is an EDT variant of the La Petite Robe Noire line. And this one really has been my favourite for a few years. This is something that I just always want to wear to work. It's fresh, it's clean, and I really like the fruitiness. This is an apricot-based fragrance. There is supposed to be the cherry here still of the La Petite Robe Noire line, but I really feel like it's in the background. The tea and the apricot are really the things that come through for me. And you also get that kind of, the rest of the DNA, but really it's the muskiness that I really like in the dry down. I think this one's really pretty and it always just makes me feel super girly, and I'm really sad that my bottle is nearly gone because this is discontinued now, and I did try and replace it with another La Petite Robe Noire flanker, and I actually went for the EDP and it was totally the wrong choice because it's a different vibe. It's a nice fragrance but it's a different vibe, And I'm wondering whether to get the Eau Fraiche or whether to just stick with something else in my collection. I've probably got such a big collection, I probably don't need to buy anything else to replace this one. But I will miss this when it's gone, and I think this one probably will disappear in 2025 because I do wear it a lot. So that one's La Petite Robe Noire Plissée. So in October, I had been into store and I'd been into a Lush store and I was trying all of their new fragrance range, and one just had me at hello. I just was so taken with it. I bought it on the spot and I wore it for a week straight. So this was by far my most worn fragrance in October. And this one is Lush's Chelsea Morning. So this fragrance is just the most delicious gourmand. I feel like this is a very British gourmand. And you know why I say that? It's because it's not perfect. It smells homemade. It smells like, you know, you're doing some cooking with your mum when you're little and, you know, you've maybe left your biscuits a little bit too long. They've slightly caught, that kind of not quite perfect kind of smell, but you still really enjoy them. They're still delicious and you're still really proud because you've made them. That's the feel of this fragrance. So this opens with a little bit of lemon, but really it's the dry down that I love. It's the kind of ginger biscuity, maple syrup deliciousness, the kind of cinder toffee bonfire night feel of this fragrance that is just very Moorish. And I actually thought this wasn't long lasting when I first got it, and I was respraying it quite a bit. And then I just realised that every time I moved, the fragrance would reappear. So it was clearly still on my skin. And this one actually, I think now is pretty long lasting. I think it's sort of 6-7 hours on my skin easily. This one has been a huge hit for me. I'm not normally someone who's really heavily into gourmands. I'm very picky with gourmands. I particularly don't like caramel in gourmands. I feel like caramel is done so badly in so many fragrances, and this is just a really nice caramelized feel, but very much more of like a court sugar kind of caramelized feel rather than a liquid kind of sugary caramel. Yeah, just an excellent fragrance and a really good value fragrance as well. It's really not expensive and it really took me into the world of Lush. It made me want to try more of them. I tried some before, but it just made me even more interested. So that's Lush's Chelsea Morning. So in November, I was doing loads of teaching and I was applying for teaching qualifications. I was trying to get on a teaching course, which I actually did get onto. And so I just wanted a gentle, kind of huggy fragrance for those activities, really. And this was one of the ones that I put on my fragrance tray, and it ended up being my most worn in November. So this was actually gifted by the brand Sana Jardin, and I'd chosen it because I'd sampled all of their fragrances in a testing video. And this was one of my favourites. And this was really the one that I thought that I would wear most often. And I felt like I wanted a sandalwood fragrance in my collection. So this is Sandalwood Temple. And I really feel like, yeah, that's a great name for this because it is a very relaxed sandalwood fragrance. It has all the aspects of sandalwood. It has the spiciness, the slight greenness. It also has some woodiness from some cedar supporting it. It has a slight smokiness from some guaiac wood. It has a sweetness to it as well. Almost a slight milkiness as well to this. Just every aspect of sandalwood encapsulated in one fragrance. I think it's really well done. It lasts quite a long time on my skin. Actually, out of all of the fragrances from Sana Jardin, this was pretty much the most long lasting. This one, and I think Tiger by Her Side, were probably the most long lasting on my skin. I really rate this one. I think if you haven't tried anything from Sana Jardin, this is probably the most likeable of their whole collection, especially if you really enjoy sandalwood. I think this one really perfectly suits that kind of autumn-winter transition because it's got that kind of slight spiciness that just makes you feel warm and cosy. So that's Sandalwood Temple by Sana Jardin. So finally for December, my most worn fragrance was a runaway winner of Chopard Love. This was one of the fragrances on my perfume tray. There were a few fragrances that did tie for second place, but this was the overall winner. So this fragrance is a rose fragrance, and I really was in a very rosy mood for December. I was craving rose fragrances. And in actual fact, I bought a rose fragrance, which I will talk about in a later video. But this one is a mixture of loads of different types of roses. Sometimes I smell them more individually. Sometimes I smell them just as a big mix. I would say the most prominent rose here is probably the Bulgarian rose. You get kind of a powderiness. It's quite a rich kind of redness. And it's definitely a drier rose, really. This fragrance, I think the things that stand out to me are the kind of slight sweetness, also the powdery cinnamon. It's almost like a dusty cinnamon. It's more of a warmth rather than any kind of spiciness or heat. And also there's also some patchouli. It's also a little bit resinous as well. It just really sort of strikes me as quite a Christmassy fragrance, maybe because of the bottle colour, maybe because I just like roses, but I wore this one to go home for Christmas to see my mum, and she gave me a hug and she said, oh, you smell good. But yeah, I wore this one out to my Christmas meal as well. I changed my mind and ended up wearing this one. I just love this fragrance. I just think this fragrance is a bargain for the price that this was, which I think it was sort of £25 for 50ml from new. It really wasn't expensive, and I think it's a great fragrance for the money. It gets compared to things like Portrait of a Lady, which I don't think it's that similar to, but I see the echo. It also gets compared to Kilian's Kisses Don't Lie, I think it is, and I see that more. I think it's quite similar to that one. Same perfumer too. But yeah, Shop Hard love, definite love for me, and my most worn fragrance in December. So that's the final fragrance in my most worn 2024 video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, then please press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please also check out my most worn in 2023 and 2022 videos. I will leave them linked down below. And please also let me know which were your most worn fragrances in 2024 and which are you looking forward to taking with you into 2025 and wearing this January. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.